McCowan, it's Shannon on the program today. Our friend Jamie Campbell will join us on this day, the host of Blue Jays baseball on Sportsnet for many years, formerly the play-by-play guy, and a fellow that John and I used to bump into in the halls, I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but now and then at Sportsnet. And
so I met Jamie decades ago with his first job in television. Do you know what that was, Bob?
I don't.
Receptionist at the CBC Sports Department.
Are you serious? Really?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. That was his sojourn into television. Then he went and became an on-air guy a few places across the country, and then ended up at Sportsnet when Sportsnet got invented in the late 90s.
Well, we're going to talk to him when we come back after these messages. Well, for some period of time, it looked like the baseball season might never start. And that was depressing for all of us. But it's underway. The two sides, everybody knows, they've managed to solve the collective bargaining issues, at least temporarily. And we will play 162 baseball games after a shortened spring. It's McCowan, it's Shannon, of course. And Jamie Campbell, the host of Blue Jays baseball on Sportsnet, joins us from at home. Do you have any concerns as this thing was dragging out that there might not be baseball when all was said and done?
I absolutely did. By the way, great to see you, Bob, and you, John. I absolutely did. And I think if you are one who loves baseball and has followed its history, you got the sense that the two sides were really digging in. And to me, it's a relief that they managed to come to some kind of an agreement. I wonder sometimes if the temperature of the world may have contributed in some way, given what was going on through the pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine. And people will always say, well, you know, outside factors should never contribute to anything going on inside labor negotiations. But I just think that the perception of them not coming to some kind of a deal until well into the summer would have been catastrophic for baseball.
Particularly when you consider that most people didn't understand what the driving reason for the lockout was. I mean, everybody was making money, Jamie.
Yeah, well, you know, back in the days when I was collecting baseball cards, I wasn't that concerned with quote unquote core economics. The best that I like to tell people is that there is so much money being made in baseball these days, and not enough of what is being made is going to those who are attracting the audiences and creating that need to buy the merchandise and giving people a reason to access all the platforms, and that would be the players. And you know, I'm grateful that a season is going to get underway, slightly delayed. But the players have something to fight for. They fought for it. I'm sure there are improvements that they'll look for 5 years down the road. But for now, we don't have to worry about it for half a decade.
Well, we've got spring training baseball, and that is now underway. Blue Jays are 5 or 6 games in, and we are all. I always have to caution people, and even caution myself, not to get upset if your team is not playing well in spring training, not winning games, and not to get overconfident if your team is winning games. But I don't know how to quantify spring training. I've been at so many of them. I'm not sure what you look for. You look for little things, but even then, what happens 3 weeks from now could be completely different from what you're seeing right now. Nonetheless, the Blue Jays, I think, are 4-2 on the spring and look pretty good, don't they?
They do. They absolutely do. And I always like to relate the story that Roy Halladay told years ago about his first start of, it may have been the 2008 spring schedule, where there was one specific pitch that he went into that particular game intending to throw. Just one. I don't know if it was a fastball, a cutter. I don't remember exactly what kind of pitch it was. But after the game, after he gave up 3 or 4 runs and lost the game, he made it very clear that my intention is not to have a bunch of single A and double A fill-ins celebrate some kind of a victory when this thing is over. My intention is to be ready for the real games. And I was experimenting on the mound today. And just the other day, you seem to get the same impression from Jose Barrios, who was exclusively throwing two-seam fastballs and sliders as far as I could tell. And I just think that it's time for players to get ready for the big games, and that we should never factor too much into the regular season. And you're absolutely right. On paper, and I've had so many people come up to me, Bob, in the last couple of weeks saying, boy, these guys look like surefire American League champions. And I say, on paper, no question about it, one of the most powerful lineups in all of baseball. I get it. But if one or two arms go down and George Springer spends an extended period on the DL again, or the IL, pardon me, something happens maybe to Vladdy, it doesn't matter how good your team is and how good it looks on paper. 162 games is an absolute grind, and you need players to be healthy for most of it to succeed.
So are you satisfied, Jamie, with where this lineup is? I mean, with the changes, I mean, no Ray, no Simeon, and have they replaced those guys well enough?
I think they have. In my estimation, John, Ray goes to Seattle and is promptly replaced by the signing of Kevin Gossman. Alek Manoah is now familiar, at least, with what big league baseball is all about for 3/4 of a season. Kikuchi, to me, is a wonderful fifth starter. It's amazing what they pay fifth starters these days.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that the rotation, some are saying, is top 3 in all of baseball. And yet teams don't get as much out of their rotations as they used to. 5 to 6 innings is quite enough. Thank you very much. And then we're going to leave it to the bullpen. So, if this was, say, the 1980s or 1990s, when you relied on guys going 8 and 9 innings, I'd say, wow, this is a really good team. But it will all depend on how fresh and how good the bullpen is as well. There's a lineup there that is unmistakably powerful. And they've really done a nice job of addressing the left side of the infield defensively, because last year third base was, for the most part, a black hole from a defensive perspective and from an offensive perspective. And Matt Chapman seems to solve that issue. So I'm completely satisfied. I don't see how any Blue Jay fan can't be at this point based on what we've seen.
Well, it's early season. I'm going to disagree with you slightly, because I actually thought that Espinal did a good job when he had the opportunity at third base overall. Pretty good defensively. And offensively, while he provided almost no power, and traditionally third base is a power spot, but he got base hits.
Mm-hmm.
He's an interesting story. Now he gets moved over to try and get some playing time at second base, works out during the off season, and is like a different guy, and showed it yesterday with a rocket home run. To left field, just down the left field line. Now, is that a thing to come on a regular basis or not? Well, we will see. But this guy has worked hard during the offseason to get himself into the discussion at second base. And right now, I'm not sure that Biggio is ahead of him. What do you think?
I can't disagree with you. Defensively, there's little question in my mind that Espinal is superior to Biggio. They have, as you know, moved Cavan around the diamond quite a bit. So, that kind of stability is to be judged, frankly, in the regular season. If they're going to play off each other each day at second base, then we'll just see what that side of the infield is going to look like. I was stunned to see Espinal in person. I think the excessive protein shakes paid off handsomely for him, because he's much bigger than he was a year ago. And maybe that translates. I don't like to read too much into spring power again, because remember,
you're right.
the pitchers are always going to be behind the hitters when the spring games begin. And sometimes you're stepping into one of those games against a guy who's destined for single A baseball anyway. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I'm not so sure. You hear a lot of critics say, well, this can't be a championship team if they're, employing Biggio-Espinal combination at second base. It can't be a championship team if a still inexperienced Danny Jansen is behind the plate. There are other players on that team that I think can make up for those alleged weaknesses. But we're going to see. And it all gets started on April the 9th, 8th. I'm losing track of time against the Texas Rangers.
By the way, for the record, I'm going to start using excessive protein shakes for the fact that I've gone from a 44 to a 46 jacket. So, but the off season, though, I think we all understood in the off season, this team was supposed to have a bit more balanced hitting with more bats from the left side. And we may not see that.
Nope, we might not. And if they happen to pull the move that everybody's hoping they pull, and somehow before opening day acquire Jose Ramirez,
well, that's different.
The option that we all kept hearing was Kyle Schwarber or Freddie Freeman. I'm not so sure I ever quite understood the Freddie Freeman rumblings, other than that he's one of the best hitters in baseball. So yeah, find a place for him. I don't know what they're going to do about the left-handed situation. They're going to have to get creative. You might see a move made before opening day. You might see some moves made in season. But it's funny how for a couple of years now, this has been an extremely right-handed hitting lineup, and it doesn't look like it's going to change.
Well, and this is a team that won 91 games and was a wink away from making the postseason last year, and who knows what happened there. And they were just as right-hand dominant last year as they are going to be this year. So I get it. I get you'd like to have a left-handed bat. I get you want to have a significant left-handed bat. You don't want just some guy in the lineup, who hits from that side. But I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much. I don't know about you.
It doesn't bother me either. And in particular, why it doesn't bother me is that whoever that bat is going to be, I'm not convinced that having a left-hander coming off the bench is that impactful. To me, if you want to even out the lineup a little bit, you have to find an everyday left-handed hitter.
Exactly.
And frankly, in that lineup, who are you going to replace? And look, Freddie Freeman would have been a wonderful addition to this club, but then all of a sudden you're telling Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who just finished second in the MVP race, that you're not going to play first base every day. And you guys saw with your own eyes, as did I, the improvements he made defensively at first base last year were very evident. So to suddenly say to him yet again, by the way, we just picked up a future Hall of Fame player. I'm afraid we're going to have to shift you across the diamond every now and then and have you DH a little more often than you did. I don't know how smart that would have been.
I'm with you. When that discussion came up, I mean, to me, it didn't make any sense at all. And as Bob and I talked about this a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and particularly before Freeman signed with the Dodgers, Guerrero's so comfortable at first. Why would you even contemplate upsetting his mental state of thinking he has to worry about playing third base as opposed to first base? It didn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, except that it's Freddie Freeman. It's he's a damn good ball player and a left-handed hitter and has power. It's not some cheeseball guy you found on the street.
I'm not saying that, but you've got strength at first with Guerrero at first. Just find ways to work around it. There are more baseball players than Freddie Freeman out there.
Well, what if they do the deal with Cleveland?
Well, that's okay.
Well, Jamie,
I don't disagree. I think Ramirez would be an everyday second baseman.
Right.
And
of course he would.
Right. Yeah. You're asking a guy who's a multi-time All-Star to shift a position. but do so for a team that is quite easily a contender versus a team that at this moment, I think, has something in the neighborhood of a $35 million payroll in the Cleveland Guardians. So I don't think Jose Ramirez would have much of a problem with it. And truthfully, the Blue Jays still have, even after acquiring Chapman from Oakland, still have a wealth of quote unquote top prospects in their system. So, they wouldn't have to give up a major league player to get them.
Are you suggesting we should not close the book on that concept, that this could still happen before the season starts?
The way this team works, by the time, this podcast is posted, that deal could be done, right? I always like to remind people, the Jays will surprise you every single time. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw Josh Donaldson from Oakland prior to the 15 season. Nobody saw David Price midseason coming to Toronto. Nobody saw Troy Tulowitzki. So we can sit here as we do and prognosticate on who's going to be acquired from which team all we want. But the truth is, they make these moves that make you go, wow, I didn't see that coming. And they tend to pay off.
By the way, when you consider Donaldson came from Oakland, Semien came from Oakland, Chapman came from Oakland, I think it's great that the AAA team in Oakland works well for the. I really do. I think it's magnificent. I mean, if you're an I've thought about this a couple of times. If you're an A's fan, I don't know how you can go to the ballpark and know where do you create loyalty for your fan base if this is all that happens in Oakland every time?
So here's the funny thing about Oakland, and you guys are old enough to remember that the New York Yankees used to treat the Kansas City A's in exactly the same manner. I think there was some co-ownership of both teams, if I'm not mistaken. But the funny thing about Oakland is every time they start getting rid of all of these all-star caliber players, they somehow seem to resurface almost immediately as a playoff contender in the American League West.
They find other guys, or they've got other guys waiting.
Oakland and Tampa.
Yep.
Well, they both operate the same way, but they both operate that way clearly because they have to from an economic perspective. And wouldn't it be interesting to see those two franchises moved to markets that could actually support those franchises and get them to even $150 million payroll? Doesn't have to be 300 million. It could be just $150 million payroll. Like what could those two teams do?
Oh,
or would they screw it up?
Wow. I don't think so. Go ahead.
Tampa Bay hasn't screwed up anything in the last 10 years.
Well, I don't disagree with you.
And they as far as I'm concerned, hey, look, the Blue Jays have made great strides. We all know that. But until further notice, the number one team in the American League East is still the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, I mean, they're frightening in that respect.
And on top of that, Tampa is still a very good team, but the people that have left Tampa in the management positions have gone on and made the teams that they join, i.e. the LA Dodgers.
Yes.
Almost dynastic.
Yes.
When you think about it.
Yes.
So there's a secret sauce. There's a secret sauce that they have in Tampa that every once in a while gets distributed a little bit within Major League Baseball. There is something magic there. That's for sure.
I can't deny I miss the days of the Devil Rays. As soon as they changed that name, they became a powerhouse.
The Devil Rays weren't a very good team. The Rays were terrible. Really good. Yeah,
yes.
Right.
Well, I'm sitting here just pondering, and this is obviously completely unplanned. What's the last?
Hold on, Bob.
What?
Have we ever planned anything?
Not a damn thing.
Yeah.
So what's the last bad deal Tampa Bay has made? Well, the last team guy that they traded, who was great, continued to be great, became great, and
elsewhere.
What they got, yeah. And they got, cheese balls
they got quality.
Exchange.
Yeah.
Listen, everything.
I can't remember one.
Nope. Everything that comes to mind for me dramatically improved their club. Arozarena is one of the best players in the game. That trade they pulled with the Pittsburgh Pirates when they sent Chris Archer to Pittsburgh and
perfect example.
Got Meadows, got Glasnow. That to me, that's one of the most impactful trades of the last 20 years. It stuns me how savvy they are in that respect.
Well, I'm just off the top of my head, the three trades that jump out at me is when they got rid of David Price. You know what? Price has had a great career, he's had a good career, but not since he left. Evan Longoria goes to the Giants. I mean, their timing is impeccable. And look at what they did with Blake Snell. I mean, here's a guy that was, that close to winning the World Series, got pulled, and they trade him. I mean,
and then he becomes a Padre,
and he becomes a San Diego Padre. It's amazing what they've done.
Yeah, it is quite something to watch.
Weaknesses on this club. Harder to find now than they were a couple of months ago, to be most specific. But one of the places where there are questions is behind the plate. You've got 3, maybe 4 guys who have bid for that job or are bidding for that job. One of them is a young player, Mourinho, and we'll see what he turns out to be. But I think we would have been more comfortable if they'd gone out and got an experienced catcher. But that never seemed to be in the plan. It was never something that was really talked about much. Maybe because the emphasis was we got to figure out third base, and we got to figure out second base, and we got to get another starting pitcher. And they did all those things, but they didn't do anything behind the plate. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, let me respond by acknowledging, as you both know, that every single day I sit beside a well-tenured minor league catcher who had some major league time. And I don't think a day passes during the baseball season that Joe Siddall doesn't question whether or not the Blue Jays can contend with the current catching situation. And his belief is that what would put this team over the top, in much the same manner as Russ Martin's arrival a few years back coincided with, 2 consecutive years in the postseason, is an experienced catcher. The greatest roadblock to that is who's out there, who's acquirable. Yadier Molinas don't come along very often.
Exactly.
And when they do, you've got to figure out how to lock them in long term. And by all accounts, and Buck Martinez and I had a great conversation about this 2 weeks ago in Dunedin. By all accounts, Gabriel Moreno is that person. He is that one catcher who's sort of once in a generation, unmovable as far as Buck was concerned. And I said, hey, Buck, look, if Cleveland calls and says, we'll give you 2 years of Jose Ramirez straight up for Mourinho, do you do it? And he said, absolutely not. And I said, wow, okay.
You're talking to another catcher, though.
I'm talking to another catcher, but I've heard the same thing from Siddall as well, right? Yeah. And their concern is Jansen competent enough to be that person? And now that the rosters are going to be slightly expanded for opening day, you've got this ability now to carry 3 catchers, which means maybe a combination of Jansen, McGuire, and Kirk. There's a lot of inexperience there still to this day. And so if you're asking me about a weakness, I'm going to go off what I hear from my sidekick and say that might be the area.
Well, if you're going to acquire a catcher, are you making a trade for a better bat or game management?
I think you're trading for game management. And again, who stands out in that respect? Who is it that's out there that beyond JT Realmuto, who's clearly not available, or Yadier Molina, whose days are nearing an end? Mm-hmm. There aren't that many Buster Posies around anymore, and so you've got to kind of grow them from within, which is what they think they're doing with Gabe Moreno. And for now, hey, look, unless there's some kind of a deadline deal where someone surfaces who would be a tremendous addition to the catching ranks, I think, obviously they're going ahead with the plan that they have in place, and that means Danny Jansen gets most of the time behind the plate.
Well, we know what's also interesting is the Blue Jays took a kid basically out of A ball and in an emergency basis put him in the major leagues, and he didn't get killed. But they're very reluctant to do anything similar with Moreno. And I find that really intriguing. And I wonder whether, given what they have, and I think the lack of confidence that they have as an organization in the three guys. I mean, they carried three catchers last year. And I mean, they didn't do it because all three were so good. They couldn't afford to be without them. They did it because they weren't sure which one or two were their best. And didn't have anybody else that seemed superior as a bat off the bench, which is saying something too, because none of them hit great. So why not let the kid play? Why not bring the kid up? And yeah, you might have some shortcomings, but apparently he's he's going to be a stud offensively and is probably well ahead of the curve defensively. Isn't that what you hear?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say this. I think that's a very distinct possibility. I think that is something that you will see, not on opening day. Opening day is not the time to suddenly unveil a kid that has no major league experience, who has, all-star written all over him, and throwing him behind the plate for a team that fancies themselves a division contender might not be the smartest idea. But I have no illusion in believing that there is a very good chance, if things aren't working out with the combo of Jansen, McGuire, and Kirk, that you may see them take a chance on Moreno, say mid-season, especially if he's tearing up the minor leagues. I could easily see it happening because, it's almost like sometimes you just need that shot in the arm. Sometimes you need, as much as this is a very young team. Remember when Marcus Stroman came back from being away an entire season with, I think it was a torn ACL, and he rehabbed himself back and was one of the best late season additions they ever had, even though, frankly, he was still part of the organization. Sometimes you just need that. And that might be what purpose is served by Gabe Moreno at some point this year.
Yeah. The other side of that argument is that this team, as Bob mentioned, was 91 wins last year. It's easy to think that they could win 95, 96, 97 this year with those three catchers in the position playing and platooning. So why not let the guy mature and grow at his own pace at this point? And I know there's a new collective bargaining agreement. I know the rules are a little different, but you're still going to be in a position that down the line his contract is going to be a factor. So why not be? It's like it's Jamie. It's like when you have a team in any sport where you continue to win with one of your best players out from injury. Don't rush him back. Take time. Let him mature. Let him heal to 100%. But let Moreno mature more in Buffalo, in order to know that next year or after August 1st, he can be a factor. Just be patient.
Agreed. He might force the hand though, and we both know there's a significant difference between hitting AAA pitching and hitting major league pitching. That I understand. But if you're not getting production on a roster that will produce, right? I don't think there's any argument that this Blue Jays team is going to hit a lot of home runs and score a lot of runs in general. If you're in any kind of a dogfight for a position, even with one additional team now eligible in the American League to make the postseason, and this guy is tearing AAA apart, it might be a case where the hand is forced. And I don't have a problem with that anymore. I really don't. I know development is important. I think it's different for position players sometimes. We've seen how difficult the transition minors to majors has been for, say, Nate Pearson. Didn't seem to be too difficult for Alek Manoah, and that's what you get with pitchers. I don't see it as much of an issue with position players sometime, because you can really monitor their playing time and sort of ease them into that role. He might just force their hand, and we've seen it before. Bo Bichette was on fire down in AAA before he got called up, and that wasn't really a mistake. He's settled in nicely as an all-star caliber player. Yeah.
We got to take the break. Jamie Campbell is with us, the host of Blue Jays Baseball on Sportsnet. We'll come back after these messages. It's McCowan, it's Shannon, it's Jamie Campbell with us. We're talking about baseball and the Blue Jays in general. I don't know how many more questions on the Blue Jays. I got one at least.
Go.
What do you do with Pearson if he is as good as you hope he is? If he shows you that he's figured it out, that he's healthy, if all those things happen, what do you do with him?
Well, I know what Nate wants, and he made that very clear in recent days down in Dunedin, that he fancies himself a starting pitcher. But now, given how they've constructed this starting staff, and yes, of course, there will be some kind of interruption to the starting five in terms of
there's going to be
injury. It always happens.
Sure.
And given that they've suddenly seized this window of opportunity this year to be, as some are saying, destined to play in the World Series, I love the idea of Nate Pearson as a power arm. Although, it looks like he'll be a hybrid pitcher in some form, sort of a bulk guy who is called upon every now and then to pitch one inning, but then might be called upon to pitch the first 3 innings of one game to start. I understand what they're doing, and I understand what Nate wants, but to see him in a one inning role in the major leagues, as brief as his tenure has been, versus in a starting role, there's a significant difference. When he's allowed to throw 20, 21 pitches and just rear back and go, he seems to be utterly effective, and maybe more importantly, very, very confident. I think what happens sometimes is when he's asked to navigate a lineup once or even twice, it tends to get to him. And, I'm not sure he has the makeup of Alek Manoah. And Alek Manoah, I think, said last year, there were many, many times in his early life when his mom didn't eat because the two boys had to. And I think part of where that fiery temperament comes from is based on his upbringing. I don't know if I see that with Nate Pearson, but I do see it in a one inning situation where he's your 7th inning guy, for example, and he's there to blow away the 2, 3, and 4 hitters. Personally, I think that's the way they should be utilizing him in the next year or two. But I don't think you also, from a developmental standpoint, take an arm like that and say relief pitcher only. I think there's still the potential there for a really solid starting pitcher.
I do too. I think it's exactly what has to happen.
Do you think he's 100% healthy? I mean, isn't that going to be the issue with him in the rest of his career?
I do, John, as we speak.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a conversation with him down in Dunedin recently, and he's fine. But when you throw as hard as that kid does, the potential for you to not be fine is always going to be there.
Yeah.
It amazes me the career that Nolan Ryan had, throwing as hard as he did and playing for 26 years in the big leagues. Just baffles me, given how protective the organizations are now of arms, and how arms are babied, especially those who throw in the high 90s. That's the reality of the game today.
You are playing into Bob's hand here. I'm waiting for Bob to explode here about, he needs 3 starters and just rotate them, and
Well, Spawn and Sane in 2 days of rain. That's me.
Because I must admit, Jamie, when you said put him out there for 21 or 22 pitches and let him throw as hard as he can, the first thing I thought of is he's going to strain something. That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. But the thing about Nate is he doesn't have to throw that hard to hit 97.
Yeah.
Right. He loves the radar gun. Take a look. Next time you see him in a major league setting, a lot of the times he'll turn and look for that miles per hour reading on the outfield scoreboards.
Right.
I personally, I don't need to see 102 from him. I think this guy could be a free and easy 96, 97 and still got a lot of guys out. But that's not, I'm not his father. I don't have an influence over what he does on a pitching mound.
Well, look, here's the other thing. There's a big difference in the way the game is played now and the way the game was played 30, 40 years ago with starting pitchers and how long they go and whether they, we're thrilled today if a guy goes 6.
Mm-hmm.
Thrilled. Used to be 6 was kind of well, that's why, that's why games are given, you get wins and losses based on 4.5, paying 5. So 6 was kind of the bare minimum. I remember when I first started covering the team, nobody ever got pulled out when they were in the 7th inning or 8th inning. If they were going well, you pitched till the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Not now. So what if Pearson becomes the guy who every 4 days, maybe 3, pitches 3 innings, pitches you to the 9th, gets you 6, 7, and 8 every 3 days? What do you think? Is that possible?
Yes, as long as it's one time through the order. And I know that's sort of, the obsession in recent years in terms of how pitchers are utilized. Never 3 times through an order for a starter. You got to be awfully good. You got to be Max Scherzer to get 3 times through an order. So yes, I would be agreeable to something like that. But again, I'm more concerned because the bullpen's pretty deep as it is. You got Romano, you got Richards, you got Simber, you got Tim Mesa. You got some pretty good arms there. I don't think you need anything more than an inning from Nate Pearson.
Really?
And personally, I don't think. And the reason I say that, Bob, is because if as you so aptly stated, 6 innings is a good outing for any starting pitcher. I'm looking at all 5 guys in that rotation right now and seeing all of them are good for 6. Right? There aren't too many 3 innings and out type starters on that roster now. And so what I'm intending to see is starters going deep, and by deep I mean 6 innings, and a refreshed bullpen. And that sort of negates the need for Nate Pearson to face 9 batters, in my opinion.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be a revelation for a team that, let's face it, if they had had a better bullpen, a rested bullpen for the first half of the season last year?
Oh,
because that really was the story of the season in the end, wasn't it? Why they didn't...
Tyler Chatwood, right?
Yeah.
Tyler Chatwood. Say no. I think they used 33 different pitchers last year. And that's sort of the way Major League Baseball is now. The days of getting through an entire season with 12 pitchers total, those days are long gone. And we understand that. But I think personally, given the construction of this rotation, you're not going to need to see as many relief arms in the games this year unless they have a swath of injuries.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to see them unless there's, as you said, a bunch of injuries, and then you'll see probably something close to that. But starting pitchers aren't going to pitch much more than 5 on any given day, maybe 6. If you really want to stretch them out, give them a bit of a break, other than maybe Manoah, who showed me that he can still be tough in the middle innings of a game. But I don't know. I guess I throw Pearson out there against against the same lineup. I wouldn't be worried about him facing a guy for the second time.
Or do you send him to Buffalo?
No.
And make him a starting pitcher and let him be the starting pitcher and then bring him in when you need a starting pitcher.
Nope. I'm not doing that.
Jamie?
What do you, Jamie?
No, I think that's a major league arm. Again, I'm not the manager. I'm not the general manager. I see a major league arm there, but I see a 1-inning major league arm right now for a team that hopes to win its division.
Yeah.
I don't want to be at this point experimental with Nate Pearson as a starting pitcher because it's not 2017. If this was a team that was in between competitive streaks, if this was a rebuilding franchise, if this was a team that was pushing toward being a contender, I'd say by all means, let's see what the kid has as a starting pitcher. But what I'm seeing is a team that legitimately believes it should probably end up winning the American League pennant. So if that's the case, I want to see personally Nate Pearson throwing, 99 and 100 miles an hour for, 1 inning, 3 guys.
Oh.
Personally, that's what I believe. But again, I'm not a major league general manager nor a field manager. So there are smarter people than I making those decisions.
Hey, and it's funny, we've done 3 or 4 shows since the CBA has been signed, and we have spent less than 2 minutes talking about the outfield. No, we have. We've talked about third base, we talked about second base, we talked about catching, we haven't talked about the outfield. No. And my question really is, Jamie, is the outfield that is on opening day, how much different will it be when they get to the end of the season?
That depends, right?
Yeah.
And again, all those prognosticators, beware. This is a team that watched their prized acquisition from a year ago miss most of the year with a variety of resurfacing injuries. And based on what we saw from year one, George Springer is fragile. And if he's got to spend a month or 2 months nursing an injury again this season, then it's going to throw a few things into question out there. Luckily, they haven't moved Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who was often cited as trade potential, especially if there was a deal with Cleveland to be made. Teoscar is Silver Slugger Award winner and a guy who's almost assured of bashing 35 home runs, and who's, let's say, defensive lapses have subsided a little bit in recent years.
They have.
You're being kind. You're being kind.
Randall Grichuk is who he is. He's on a relatively favorable contract, and he's good for 30 home runs and about a .235 batting average, if batting average means anything anymore. But he's still a good defender. So I think they're pretty secure in that respect. It's all dependent on health.
Yeah.
Well, look, we got a couple of minutes here, and I want to. I don't want to address this off the top, and I said this to John earlier. But I did want to address it at least, or have you address it maybe, your health situation. And you look good. Everything seems fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate you actually bringing it up. I was hoping you would. And part of the reason why I do appreciate it is because when I knew that I needed to go into treatment, I couldn't hide it anymore. I've actually been hiding it for 14 months. But what I'd like to do is, because in those 14 months where I knew I had chronic lymphocytic leukemia, I was having a difficult time finding people who had the same disease. And I needed a beacon of hope in some form, somebody to talk to who's been through it, who could say, hey, don't be scared. Treatment options are wonderful. So what my hope is, by publicizing this, Bob, is that when you see me in a fancy suit smiling to a camera on opening day, and almost every game from opening day until the end of the season, playoffs included, and hardly ever missing any time sitting on that desk, but for some vacation time here and there. My hope is that anybody who's been afflicted with this, or in particular is newly diagnosed with CLL, I hope that they can turn on their television, see a healthy, living, breathing me, and know that this isn't the 60s anymore. You can live a long, prosperous life with leukemia And I intend to do just that. So I wanted people to know, and I want them to see me looking fresh and happy and healthy, hopefully, depending on how this treatment goes. But the treatments available in 2022 are remarkable. I'm about to start one that will essentially push my leukemia into remission, hopefully for anywhere between 5 and 7 years. It's chronic, it's incurable, it will return, and I'm prepared. But for the time being, I just want people to know who have cancer of any kind that it's not the death sentence it used to be. There are so many people that have reached out to me on social media with far worse situations than me, and they've survived them and they're thriving. Mm-hmm. And I want to be a face of someone who's living with blood cancer. And that's why I went public, and I appreciate you asking me about it.
So Jamie, how was it? How was it diagnosed? I mean, because that in the end might be, as we know, the treatments have improved. Mm-hmm. It's trying. How do you stay ahead of it? And so how did you find out? What did you feel so that you knew you had something?
Do you guys go for annual physicals? I went for mine, got a blood test, and 4 days later got that phone call.
Wow. Okay.
From my family physician, Dr. Marilyn Kiefer, whose son plays for the Montreal Canadiens, I might add, Jake Evans. Mm-hmm. And January 11th of 2021, she called me and said, the tests are back and it looks like you might have CLL. And I was sitting on the very couch I'm sitting on right now. My kids were in school online, and I started shaking because it's an awful word. Right. Let's be honest. It's a terrible word to hear, but I'm no longer scared. I would encourage anybody, especially 50 plus, to make sure you're regularly seeing your physician, getting your checkups, taking blood tests. Even if you don't think you need them, it's worth checking. Mm-hmm. And CLL is a disease that you can live with for years and years and years, and it never becomes symptomatic. Unfortunately for me, it became symptomatic 14 months after I got diagnosed. Wow. So that's why I am just now entering treatment.
And will we recognize you getting treatment? You're on television, man.
It's no longer you got to lay in a hospital bed for a month. I will literally be taking every single day, 3 times a day, an oral medication with side effects, hopefully limited. You might see a little bit of weight loss. You won't see hair loss, as far as I know. If I'm not at my best on a particular day, I'll fake it. I've been faking a lot of things.
I was going to say, welcome to our business.
Yeah. I'm expecting to live a relatively normal existence, and it's odd that we should do this as individuals, but I've done it. My dad lived to 80. Yeah. And my hematologist says, yeah, I think you'll live into your 80s. You're going to be treated the whole time, but you'll live into your 80s. And I thought, you know what? I can live as long as my old man did. That's not a bad
be okay.
life.
Well, good for you.
That'll be okay.
Good on you. It's been great seeing you, man.
You too, guys.
We hope to see you during the course of the season too. All things being equal, and we love you, and that we were thinking about you, and I'm so glad we got the opportunity to chat today. All the best to you. You know that, and we appreciate it.
I love you both too, and I thank you very much for having me.
Jamie Campbell, the Blue Jays host of on Sportsnet. We'll come back and wrap it after these messages. We are back, and we thank Jamie Campbell for.
It looks good, huh?
Today, yeah, it looks good. Looks like he looked last time I saw him on television. I think was the llast time I'm sure it is. It was the last time I saw him. Yeah, but I think soccer tonight, huh?
Well, Bob's favorite team. Bob, now, there's no Maple Leaf flag out. Are you gonna put it on the car tonight? Are you gonna start singing if they win?
No, I got to go to my mom's for dinner.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna hide.
You want me to send you texts and when scores?
No, it's okay.
You
when
sure?
does the game? When does the game start? Is it 8:30?
I think not. I think the kick. I think the kick is 9. Yeah, 9 Eastern. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can get home before then. Hi, Mom. What do you got? See ya.
No. This is when you tell people McCowan is racing home to watch a soccer game. This is an epiphany. This is something, man.
Well, I'd have bet $1 million against that ever happening.
I was going to say there'd be nights I'd say, Bob, you're going to go home and say, I'm turning on the TV and I'm only watching soccer. I would have taken that money to the bank.
That's what's happening tonight.
I would have taken the money to the bank. I would have been a rich man.
I hope it ain't 2-0 in the first couple of minutes.
Well.
Otherwise I'll watch till the end. Anyway.
All right.
We thank Jamie Campbell for joining us tonight. Enjoy the soccer game if you are so inclined and are watching. I know I will if I get to see it. For John Shannon, Bob McCowan, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.